All right, I've been working on this translation of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm about to publish it on November 5th, coming out very soon now. And what I've been doing, I've done about 8 videos now where I've compared different translations of a single verse. And today we're going to do chapter 5 of the Gita, verse 24, shloka 24. And we're mainly looking today at this word nirvana, but also brahma-nirvāna. What does brahma-nirvana mean? How do people translate that? And also, what is brahma-bhūta in this verse? And we're going to look at what different translators say and see what the differences are and if they make a difference. And you know, my general feeling is that not all translations are created equal. Some are definitely a little better than others in terms of, you know, just getting closer to what it actually says, right? As opposed to, you know, the meaning of it, which I would think is important, right? You know, when you read a text in translation, you wanna try to get as close as possible to what was intended by what was written. I would think, you know, maybe not, but you know, some translations are clearly a little bit more free, a little bit more poetic. Some paraphrase, so they don't actually translate directly. But even if you do all that, you still want to try to capture the meaning of it. And I'm trying to do that in my translation. You know, capture basically the meaning, and also I do try to basically translate each word as closely as possible, and kind of bring the consensus view for each word. Now, I don't think any translation is perfect. Every translation probably has its issues. You always lose something in translation. You always will tend to lose something in your translation versus another translation. That's why it's good to read different translations of a single text. But anyway, that said, we're going to read this and we'll talk about it. Okay, so here's the verse 5:24. ntaḥ-sukho ntar-ārāmas. Man, this is going to be hard to. Is this it? All right. ntaḥ-sukho ntar-ārāmas tathāntar-jyotir eva sa yogi brahma-nirvāṇaṁ brahma-bhūto dhigachchhati. Let's read it one more time because I kind of messed it up. But ntaḥ-sukho ntar-ārāmas tathāntar-jyotir eva sa yogi brahma-nirvāṇaṁ brahma-bhūto dhigachchhati. All right. One who is happy within, anta-sukha. Anta is within. Sukha is generally translated as happy. Is one who, you know, anta-sukha. One who is anta-sukha, happy within, or delighted within, joyful within. Well, the next one is delighted, so let's not say delighted, but happy or joyful within. Who delights within, anta-ārāma. So within, anta-ārāma, delights, rejoices within. Now you might say, well, what's the difference between those two? Why would it add something? You know, why would it add, if you've already said anta-sukha, why would you need to say anta-ārāma? That's a question. We'll see if anyone picks up on that. And what's the difference between being happy and delighting within? Yeah, you know, it has different resonances for those words. And as a consequence, tathā, who is truly illuminated within, anta-jyoti eva. Eva would be truly. Sometimes that word is not really translated. Eva is kind of a filler word. Eva is often translated as truly or indeed or certainly. Illuminated, jyoti, anta-jyoti, whose light is within, you might say, is illuminated within. Jyoti is light. tathā as a consequence, or thus, who is truly illuminated within. Tathā. Yeah, tanta. That I might change that. Tathā there. That yogi attains, sa yogi adhigachchhati. Sa yogi, that yogi attains brahma-nirvāna, dissolution of the self in Brahman. Okay, so I'm translating here nirvana as dissolution of the self. You're going to see that everyone has a different translation of what nirvana is. Some people don't even translate nirvana. I think it's important to translate every word, to try to have a translation. Oftentimes you see nirvana means like blowing out. It has the connotation of blowing out, like a candle, or like blowing your mind, or the has some other meanings. But I chose dissolution of the self here, or the small self, dissolution of the ego self, becoming Brahman, brahma-bhūta, right? Becoming becoming Brahman. And remember, there's a difference between Brahman and Brahma. Brahma is the creator, deity, the Deva, who is the creator, and then Brahman is absolute reality or ultimate reality, the true self, right? And the idea is Atman is one with Brahman, the small self, or the individual self, you could say, is one with the great self. So one who is happy within, who delights within, and as a consequence, who is truly illuminated within, that yogi attains dissolution of the self in Brahman, becoming Brahman. So that's the translation I have at this moment. I'm open to changing it. That's why we're doing this, right? All right, so the next one is Winthrop Sargent's translation. He who finds his happiness within. So he puts finds as opposed to he who is happy within. I think it's adding a word that doesn't necessarily need to be put there. He's adding finds, but that's not too bad, right? It's not. So he who finds his happiness within, his delight within, and his light within. So he's not translating tathā here. This yogin, so he's using yogin as opposed to yogi, attains the bliss of Brahman. So he's translating nirvana as bliss. Becoming Brahman. So he has becoming Brahman, as I do. I was really going off of him, mainly in my translation. But I parted ways in some respects, as you can see. So my translation is quite different in some respects than his. He who finds his happiness within, his delight within, and his light within, this yogin attains the bliss of Brahman, becoming Brahman. So he's translating nirvana as bliss. Now the question is Brahman bliss? That I think that's a question that needs to be asked. Is that what it is? Is that what God is? And how is he bringing that in? Is that really what nirvana means? So a bunch of things, and I think the way he translates nirvana, for brahma-nirvāṇaṁ, what he has brahma-nirvana, the nirvana of Brahman, the extinction of the self in Brahman. So he also has the extinction of the self in Brahman. And then he, in his actual translation, he said the bliss of Brahman. So he changed it a little bit. And I think extinction of the self is probably the closest. I chose the dissolution of the self. Extinction, it's like, extinction is like putting out the candle, right? The flame of the candle. The dissolution of the self, I prefer that, And if dissolution and extinction are basically synonymous, even though they're different, I would choose dissolution over extinction. Anyway, going forward, Swami Shivananda, he was ever happy within, who rejoices within, who is illumined within. Okay, basically the same. Such a yogi attains absolute freedom or moksha, himself becoming Brahman. So he's translating nirvana, brahma-nirvana here as absolute freedom or moksha. Interesting, right? He's not translating it directly. Not translating it directly. Is he wrong to say that? I'm not sure, but he's not translating it directly. That's okay. All right, let's see what Eknatheswaran generally translates things in a more poetic, free way. Loose translation, right? They find their joy, their rest, and their light completely within themselves. The rest, I'm not sure where that comes from, unless he understands ārāma as rest. United with the Lord, they attain nirvana in Brahman. So brahma-bhūta would be united with the Lord. They attain nirvana in Brahman. Now, the problem with that translation is he's using the word Lord and he's using the word Brahman. And it seems as if they're separate, right? They're different. Whereas the actual verse is using the same word. So that's where I would take issue with Eswaran's translation here. And also the word Lord is not even, that's kind of imported into this verse. He's importing that word into it, which is okay. He's paraphrasing. He's they attain nirvana. He's not translating nirvana, which is okay. Nirvana is a word in the English language that everyone knows, right? It's like the word guru or mantra or yoga or karma. Everyone knows these words, so you don't even have to translate them. But it'd be nice to translate it, because what is it? Again, what is it? What was meant by it in the text? That's the question. Yeah, so we all know nirvana. Okay, great. But what did it mean, right? Right. What was meant by nirvana? So I don't think that's the greatest translation myself, personally, right? Because I think it's a little misleading. Radhakrishna, he who finds his happiness within, his joy within, and likewise, so tathā, likewise his light only within, that yogin becomes divine and attains to the beatitude of God, Brahma-nirvāna. So he's translating as beatitude of God, which basically is the blessedness or the blissedness or the blissfulness of God. He becomes divine, right? So he becomes Brahman. And he's not translating Brahman either here. He's translating it as God or divine. Again, it's kind of making a separation between God and the divine in a way, at least in your reading of it, right? Whereas in the verse, the word Brahma is used twice, brahma-bhūta and brahma-nirvāna. So I would think you would want to translate that twice, right? Because it's using the same word twice. But that's me, So it becomes divine, right? Becomes Brahman, but he's saying becomes divine and attains to the beatitude of God. So he's understanding nirvana as beatitude, or I guess you would say the bliss, right? As Winthrop Sargent translates it, the bliss of God. Beatitude also has the sense of blessedness, holiness, divinity. All right, Ramanuja, one who is joyful within, whose pleasure is within. Pleasure, maybe not the best. And similarly, tathā is illumined within. That yogi, who having become the Brahman, attains the bliss of the Brahman. I have a little bit of an issue with using the word the, because that also makes it sound a little bit foreign and a little bit strange, right? Kind of the Brahman, right? Of course, yeah, it could go, saying Brahman versus the Brahman, is it that big a difference? Well, it's a little weird, to say the Brahman. Attains the bliss, so he's also using bliss. That's Ramanuja, right? Sri Swami Atmananda, one who finds happiness, light, and delight within himself, is a true yogi. Well, it doesn't say true yogi, but that is a yogi. You know, you could say that is a yogi, and being identified with Brahman, he attains Brahman. So Brahma-bhūta is identified with Brahman, he attains Brahman. He's not translating nirvana. Okay, so again, he's not translating the word nirvana here. So I don't know if that's. I mean, all these I think are lacking a little bit. You know, I don't want to sound too full of my own translation here, but I think that there, so far I have not seen one of these that I think is really let's say tackling the verse, what it actually says, or at least dealing with that, you know, the nirvana, the brahma-nirvana and brahma-bhūta. One whose happiness, Srila Prabhupada, one whose happiness is within, who is active within? I don't think so. Who rejoices within and is illumined within. So he's adding something there. he's adding active within. I don't know where that comes from, but that's an addition. There weren't 4 things, there were 3 things, and the active is not there. Is actually the perfect mystic, that's not there either, unless he translates yogi as mystic. I guess he is. But it doesn't say perfect yogi. It says that yogi attains. Okay, he is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. He's liberated in the Supreme and he attains. Right? He reaches Brahma-nirvāṇaṁ, Brahma-nirvāna. He's liberated in the Supreme. He ultimately attains the Supreme. Still not dealing with nirvana, right? What is nirvana? Translating Brahman as supreme. At least he's translating the word Brahma the same way here, right? Supreme. So they give him that, right? He doesn't have the sense of becoming Brahman, right? That I think is important if that's what Bhūta means, right? That's the question. Does it actually mean the yogi becomes Brahman? And I think that's important. If that's what it does mean, that you say that that's what it means, right? As opposed to attains the Supreme, that is not as specific, right? That is not as clear as saying becomes Brahman. Jeffrey Armstrong. Those yogis who only pursue pleasure within, again, he has pleasure here. Someone else had pleasure for ārāma, I guess, who experience anta-ārāma, ecstatic inner delight. Well, no, this is ārāma is inner delight, and are always anta-jyoti, enlightened by an illuminating brilliance from within. This is in quotations. I don't know where the quotations come from, or where the thing in quotations comes from. Have achieved brahma-nirvāna. Brahman-nirvāna, he says. Okay, so at least he's putting it there, he's not translating it, but he's actually has it, right? They no longer claim ownership over anything and identify themselves to be the same in essence as Brahman. Now, he's adding quite a few things here. They no longer claim ownership over anything and identify themselves to be the same. It doesn't say that, right? You know, and that's, you know, like, again, most people wouldn't care. Most people read this, they would not care. But I think if you're looking to find what the text is really, the import of the text, then you're not going to import things from outside the text into it and say, add things, even if what he's saying, which I think he's saying some good things here, right? And maybe these are also based in what the rest of the Gita says. But what does the verse actually say? And that's fine. If you're bringing in stuff from elsewhere in the Gita and you're adding it to help fill out the verse, I understand that. But the question is, what does the verse say? What does the verse actually say? All right, the next one. Jayadaya Goyanka. I'm going to bring it in a second. Okay, bud? Give me a second. I'll bring it. All right, bud. Jayadaya Goyanka has, he who is happy within himself, enjoys within himself the delight of the soul. Okay, that's an addition to the delight of the soul. And even so is illumined by the inner light, the light of the soul. In parentheses, he has the light of the soul. Such a yogi, and then in parentheses, Sankhya yogi, identified with Brahma, attains Brahma, who is all peace. So Nirvana, I think he's translating as who is all peace, but he's not saying Brahman, he's saying Brahma, which I think is problematic, because it's not Brahma, it's Brahman. So at least he's trying to define Nirvana. Not everyone is, right? What is Nirvana? Nirvana is a place of complete peace. Such a yogi, identify with Brahma, attains Brahma. It was all peace. So brahma-bhūta is the sense of being identified, as opposed to becoming, which I think is a different, you could say when you become something, you identify as that thing, yeah. But I can identify with being God, and I might not really be that yet, right? I might say, well, some people say, well, I am God, right? Or I am love. But you may not actually be that, right? It's just, let's not get too caught up in the words either. But and again, like I said, most people wouldn't care. Just like if a musician makes a mistake, professional musician makes a mistake, most people probably wouldn't catch it, except for that, that the other professional musicians in the audience, would say, "Oops, made a mistake there." All right, Parama Karuna Devi, who I think has a really good translation, and the one woman in this whole mix, one who is happy within the self, in parentheses, who finds pleasure within the self, in parentheses, who finds enlightenment or the light within the self, which is all good, is a yogi who attains the brahma-nirvana and the existence/realization of Brahman. This is the best translation yet, I think, except does not translate Brahma-nirvana. But this is getting closest to what it actually says, right? And she has existence/realization of Brahman. It's better than saying the identification with, I think, because identification, again, is problematic to some degree. So I think she has the closest so far of what I've seen, even more than Winthrop Sargent. Except Winthrop Sargent translated Brahma-nirvana as the bliss of Brahma. At least he translated it. Swami Mukundananda, those who are happy within themselves, enjoying the delight of God within, and are illuminated by the inner light. Such yogis are united with the Lord and are liberated from material existence. So Brahma-bhūta, united with the Lord, and liberated from material existence would be Brahma-nirvana for him. Again, at least he's translating it. Except, is it a good translation? I think he's still missing translating Brahma, right? He's not really translating Brahma there. Brahma is used twice, Brahma-nirvāna, brahma-bhūta. He's translating Brahma once as the Lord, which I don't think is the best translation for Brahma. And then Brahma-nirvāna is liberated from material existence. I also don't think that's, I mean, it's good. It's not a bad translation in terms of, just understanding maybe what the in general the Gita is saying, but what is the verse actually saying? Swami Nikhilananda, such a yogi, while still living in the body, enjoys absolute freedom because of his awareness of his identity with Brahman. Now he's missing quite a bit here. He has identity with Brahman. Absolute freedom is Brahma-nirvana. He's not translating quite a bit of the verse. Yeah. I don't think this is as good. He's definitely giving it short shrift, as you might say. He's giving the verse short shrift. He's paraphrasing it, but he's leaving out. I think just my own personal feeling is it's fine to do a paraphrase or do a translation which is more poetic and more free. Personally, I would rather have, what does it actually say? What does it actually mean? So that's what I'm trying to get at here, as you might have guessed, right? So I find Christopher Isherwood's and Swami Prabhavananda's translation. They have only that yogi whose joy is inward his peace, and his vision inward, because that's a little different, shall come to know Brahman and know Nirvana. By the way, I want to say that I have the benefit of all these other translations, and I have the benefit of the internet, and I have, so I do think that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and my translation is standing on the shoulders of giants. I wouldn't be able to have been able to do my translation without all these other people, right? And they didn't have the benefit, like when Isherwood and Prabhavananda did their translation, probably in the 40s or the 50s, they were using a typewriter. They were, it was not the same reality that it is now. So I'm not really putting anyone down. I'm just saying, as far as the translation, I'm not sure if, I think these could be better, right? So only that yogi whose joy is inward his peace, does not say peace, it says ārāma, which is not peace. And his vision, it says light, it doesn't say vision. I guess you could get vision from that, but inward shall come to know Brahman. It says brahma-bhūta, it doesn't say know Brahman. It says be Brahman, right? And know Nirvana. It says attain Nirvana, right? It says attain, it says brahma-nirvāna. So not the best either, Sorry guys. But I'm also saying, they didn't have the benefit of what I have to do my translation. BhagavadGita.org. One who experiences internal happiness with the mind immersed in the self and who sees the self within as well. Such a one, perfecting the science of uniting the individual consciousness with the ultimate consciousness, spiritually realizing the ultimate truth, attains the liberation, nirvana, of the ultimate truth. So this is actually a good paraphrase. This is a nice paraphrase. And it's a paraphrase that doesn't sacrifice the meaning, whereas other paraphrases that we've seen has. And it's translating Brahma as ultimate truth, Brahman as ultimate truth, which is good, not bad, And I might want to do that too. I might want to translate Brahman as well. What is Although that's a word in a way that might not be translatable either. But I like ultimate truth or ultimate reality. Spiritually realizing the ultimate truth attains the liberation of the ultimate truth. All right. It's a good paraphrase. I think it's a good paraphrase. And that was from bhagavad-gita.org. And I don't know who did that translation. But Sri Purohit Swami, we're at the end here, tail end of this. He was happy within himself and has found its peace, and in whom the inner light shines. That sage, yogi, sage, attains eternal bliss, Brahma-nirvāna, and becomes the spirit itself. Okay, now he's translating Brahma as spirit. Not bad. And he's also translating Bhūta as become, which is the first person that we've seen, except Winthrop Sargent. Only Winthrop Sargent and Sri Purohit Swami have done that, and myself so far. And he's translating Nirvana as eternal bliss. So that's also like Sargent and some others that translated Nirvana as bliss. I wouldn't translate yogi as sage. Remember, Prabhupada translated it as mystic. I would just translate it as yogi. But anyway, but again, you could translate what is a yogi? What is yogi? How would you translate yogi? Swami Tadatmananda has finding happiness and delight within, finding the light within. A yogi attains absorption Brahman, being non-separate from Brahman. Okay, he's getting the general meaning. Absorption Brahman is Brahma-nirvāna, so he's translating Nirvana as absorption, being non-separate from Brahman. I mean, it's okay, you know. If it really means like becoming Brahman, I mean, it has the same basic meaning. So I can't really fault that. I can't fault it. He's basically got it. You know, he's basically got the whole thing right there. He's also not translating Brahman. I didn't translate Brahman either. And he's translating Nirvana as absorption, which is the first time we've seen that. We haven't seen absorption before. All right, Sir Edwin Arnold. He is the yukta. He hath happiness, contentment, light within. His life is merged in Brahma's life. He doth Nirvana touch. It's beautiful. You know, his way of expressing it is very nice, actually. In some ways, you know, it moves you more than, like, my translation is dry. And I understand that. It's a dry translation, and it's probably not going to move people like other translations. And that's okay, you know, and at some point I might do more of a free poetic translation. But what I was going for was what do the words actually mean? Yeah. Now, I could see like whoever wrote this, and it might have been several people that wrote the Bhagavad Gita, but say there was one person that wrote it. That one person who wrote it, you know, might not have been that serious about it. The one person who wrote it might have been like, yeah, you know, this word could go there, but maybe that word, let's just throw that word in there. We need a filler word here. Let's throw this word in. And other people would say, well, that's sacrilegious. Every word is holy. Every word is sacred. Every word has a purpose. So but we never know. We don't know. So anyway, let's go back to the beginning. We'll read it again. anta-sukho ntar-ārāmas tathāntar-jyotir sa yogi brahma-nirvāṇaṁ brahma-bhūto dhigachchhati. One who is happy within, who delights within, and as a consequence, tathā, who is truly illuminated within, that yogi attains, sa yogi adhigachchhati, dissolution of the self in Brahman, brahma-nirvāna, becoming Brahman, brahma-bhūta. I like my translation. I'm gonna stay with that. Even Brahman, even translating Brahma as Brahman, I think it's important to say that the Brahma is not Brahma but Brahman. So I'm gonna stick with that, but I am gonna look up Nirvana and see what I find for Nirvana. So anyway, thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful if you did go through this whole thing with me, and I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna do probably at least half a dozen to a dozen more of these, and I may continue this in the future. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy looking at the verse a little bit more carefully, each verse. I think it's important also in terms of what I'm trying to do, that I do that. And I think people will appreciate this more, because I'm doing that. So I would love to hear your comments, your thoughts, feedback, questions, anything. And Hari Om Tat Sat. Until next time.